I tell you what I'm not a fan of in terms of the whole John Jones Adesanya conversation is and this isn't me just fanboying, this is me just being a neutral supporter, is the disrespect shown from not only John Jones, but that's by the by, we can sort of expect that, but the general public in terms of, I understand that the fight's not on the cards in the near future now, everything that's happened, but everyone coming out to say he doesn't belong there with John Jones, he could never fight John Jones, like he's not on the... Tell me what you think about it, because I've got some ideas about it.
Yeah, I mean...
About the whole situation, not even just that.
It's tough, right? Because after watching Saturday and the grappling exchanges, it is tough to envision a scenario where Adesanya comes out of that John Jones fight with his hand raised. But that's not to say that can he knock John out? Yeah, like he can knock anyone out in the world. He's the highest level of striker we've probably ever seen in the UFC. But it's going to be tough against someone who's a lot bigger and just as long. So I just think it's a bad matchup for him. That's not to say I don't want to see it though, but
I think when it comes down to the fight, and I've been thinking about it, I haven't necessarily, every time I've sort of thought about the situation, I haven't necessarily thought, Adesanya is going to fight Adesanya is going to fight John Jones and he's going to win, he's going to be knocking. I haven't been that sort of romantic about it. I haven't romanticized about it to that extent. But what bothers me is the fact that people are coming out and saying he doesn't even deserve that fight anymore. Well, hold up a second. Let's actually have a look at what he's just done. So he's cleared out the middleweight division. Yes, cleared out in his first couple years in the UFC. Undefeated fighter, right? Has gone up to the next weight, which not a lot of people do anyway, and let alone then go to fight for the title against an absolute killer in Yan, by the way. And then, not that I'm a fan of MMA maths, but if we start having a look at a little bit of MMA maths in this, went 25 minutes with Yan, who knocked out Dominic Reyes within a couple of minutes. And how did John Jones look against Dominic Reyes, by the way? Not very good. And a lot of people argue, and they still argue when they talk about this fight, that Reyes should have won. So I think it's a little bit disrespectful to say that he doesn't even deserve to be in the same conversation, bearing in mind that he's just gone 25 rounds in a weight class he's never fought at in the UFC with the champion, who is an absolute killer.
He's a unit. You've got to remember, MMA fans are so fickle. It's just short-term memory. You lose one. It's not to say that he can't fight John, but I don't want him yet, if that makes sense. So I'd love to see him do some more work at 85. I feel like that's the right move for him. Like, he took a risk going up to 205, didn't necessarily pay off, didn't get dominated. Stock hasn't gone down, still got that allure to him, in my opinion. So I think the next move is back down to 85, winner of Till Vettori, and then see how the rest of the division plays out, see how that Rob Costa fight plays out, and then go from there, because you can never plan too far ahead in MMA.
I don't think that it's, like you said, I don't think it's never going to happen. I think I agree with you. I don't think he should fight him anytime soon, but he's obviously not going to get that luxury now. I think the truth of it is the timelines are just much more spread out now, as we've got Izzy going back down to middleweight, and then we've got John Jones going back up to heavyweight. We're now looking at years.
Their paths aren't going to cross.
No, their paths are not crossing anytime soon. They're on exactly. I think on reflection, and I think it's easier to sort of speak in hindsight, but even before, so I sort of felt like this, and now it's a bit more clarification. I felt like now was the perfect time to fight John Jones, to be perfectly honest. Not necessarily that title fight with Yan, but just a fight at 205. Not even with a belt on it. I think, obviously, Izzy wanted to get that sort of double champ, which is fair enough. But I think if you said to Izzy, you can have Yan for the belt or John Jones just at 205, what would you have?
Yeah,
I think he would go John Jones. I do think he'd go John Jones. I think he'd pick that fight. Yeah,
and
exactly.
He'd be smart too. I'm not always into like, for my lane over John Jones, like especially how we'd probably have to see him winning a 5-round decision with John. So like stopping John Jones or beating Yan, legendary status. You're going to want to stop John.
Well, this is his whole thing, Adesanya, and he openly comes out and sort of admits it, so it's not us guessing.
Adesanya.
It's not us guessing. He comes out and says, I don't care about records. I don't care about titles. I don't care about that. I want to basically have the best hit list when he retires. That's what he said in many interviews. Basically says, when I
wants to
retire,
be goated.
I just want to have beaten the toughest fellas. I was going to say dudes, and I was just didn't feel natural coming out of my mouth.
Don't try.
You know what? I've been watching so much American bloody YouTube. I'm just picking up the lingo left, right, and centre, and I honestly just went to say toughest dudes, and I was just like, to myself, and my mouth just, my mouth didn't really want to do it. So
I know them ones. You like that can't come out.
I'm glad it
yeah, dudes.
But that's basically what it's basically what he basically what he said. He said he wants to come out, fight the toughest dudes, obviously, and that's it. So I think that what our argument almost pays homage to that, to the fact that he would take that John Jones fight because he's ultimately the pound for pound fighter of all time. So he's going for that. He's going for that. Unless he wants to fight Amanda Nunes next.
This is the same guy that was like when Romero was the guy, right? Who was coming off a loss. He was like, I want to fight him. If he's the one that everyone says I can't beat, all right, that fight was a fucking snooze fest. But it's fights that people say, oh, you ain't fucking winning that, and he wants to prove people wrong.
That's literally it. He said, find the hardest fellas out there, and I'll fight them. And then anyone in their right mind would look at Romero and run. He looks like a teenage mutant ninja turtle on steroids. The geezer is insane shape, and he's a very, very capable fighter as well, with some explosive power. So he's not one that people have on their hit list very often.
Yeah, interesting to see how it all plays out. Do you know what the beautiful thing is, though?
Tell us.
We're going to find out.
We're going to find out.
We're going to find out.
Peace and love. Thanks for watching Casuals Corner.